All right, I got you. It makes sense. Okay, good deal. Maybe make it over there. Let's see here. That's it. Yeah.
I mean, it's not busy.
It's just like my last week. Better enough. Yeah, work. I got 3 weeks vacation. May 1st. We're working on it. With my job.
I want to start. It was last week that my granddaughter was playing volleyball.
Taking off. Oh, I don't know. That's gonna.
It's really.
That was not your question. That had to verify. Yeah, it was.
I worked hard and I had myself. That's when I'm trying to get into the company. I gotta leave it on the side.
Oh, yeah. Nice.
Well, that's like she has $8 in the thunderstorm. They want to serve us, so that means they just be. And then what? Like West Coast. I think that they're more expensive. West Coast money, Seattle, so otherwise, like. You know? Yeah. How is that? How are? That's bad. No income tax over there. Okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's a really expensive spot. We should go to, we got a major. Like Seattle. Really nice spot. But my mom's saying when I was when there, my mom said, it was on what's on, like. Wasn't I 50/50 chance on this kind of fly back, and thing, but I think it was very good, so. Yeah. I think if I have to talk like but they just And this actually called a neighbor, which we found out will be by.
Okay, we've got 7:30, we've got to call the order, it's like the allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please. Mr. Moreno.
Here.
Mr. Dattley.
Here.
Mr. Harney.
Here.
Mr. Thorne.
Here.
Mr. Nimitz.
Here.
We've got 5 trustees present. We have got a quorum. We have got a meeting. Okay, the gubernatorial executive order has been extended once again until April 29th to allow public meetings to convene by remote in accordance with Public Act 101-0640, as long as certain requirements are met. When certain requirements are met, I'm here and the clerk is here. We do not have any trustees appearing here on remote this evening. All are here, so when not necessary, there will not be roll calls. The other thing I have to note is that the state's public health emergency will end May 11th, 2023, in accordance with the federal release of that emergency also. And at that time, the fully remote public meetings will not be allowed. We will have to resort back to the prior method in which anyone wishing to attend remotely must apply to the board. There must be a quorum present in the room to vote on whether or not to allow the other trustee to attend remotely. So that will be the process going forward. If we are allowed to have a remote, well, except on that situation we can. Okay, that being it for the president's report or the gubernatorial executive order. The minutes, do we have a motion to approve the minutes of March 20th, 2023?
So moved, Diatley. Second, Frame.
Moved by Diatley, seconded by Moreno. Are there any additions or deletions to the minutes of March 20th? There being none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The minutes of March 20th are approved. Thank you all. Okay, the next item is clerk's report.
The only thing I had to report tonight is that to the trustees, you should have received a notice from the county regarding an economic interest statement to be filed. If anyone did not receive it and it comes to your personal email, you need to let me know and I will send your name and get you squared away. So you just raising your hands real quick. Who has not received the request? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. You and I are special. We got it.
I know we respond.
Thank you for adding that to my things to do.
Hey,
I have nothing else.
Hey, Tony, quick question. I couldn't figure out. I don't have to do one, right?
You're still on the board.
Yeah, but when's the effective date? I thought it was,
It has to be filed before the end of April.
okay.
You're on the board.
Please don't pull. That's easy on me.
What?
But if you didn't.
We know where you live.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. That it? Mark?
Yep, hold it.
All right, thank you, Tony. Before we move any further, I would like to make a request that there be a motion to the board to revise the agenda this evening, to move public comments from the place where it is stationed after the typical director and finance reports that we get to now.
So moved. Thank you, Mr. President, for suggesting that motion.
Second.
Moved by Prano, seconded by Arnie to move the comments for the public from its current position at 11 to between 6 and 7, between the clerks and the planning zone. Any further comments, questions, or discussion on that motion? Not all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? There being no opposition, the motion carries unanimously. Thank you one and all. Okay, public comments. Mrs. Thomas.
Hi, I just wanted to thank the planning and zoning committee for doing their due diligence and asking the questions that they did during the public hearing last week for the storage facility. Several of them had questions from the prior public meeting and they requested info. Some of the requested info was brought forward, but some of it was not. The gentleman, when asked how many units were gonna be built in that storage facility, he couldn't give an answer. There were some other questions that were asked. He had no answers. But a lot of the zoning commission, one of them actually went out and walked the lot and had several questions about a lot of things that were gonna be happening in that lot. Size, the flooding, potential flooding, the height of the building. They were all very good questions, and I'm hoping, since the village or the zoning group, since they voted no, I'm hoping that the board, when they review all of this information, that they will do the same and work with the residents and potentially put our heads together to find another alternative for that location. So I just wanted to make the planning and zoning group aware that they did a great job.
Thank you. Rich English.
I just have a couple of things that I brought up in the fall, but because it was the end of the year, I was told re-propose these in the spring, so here I am. One is the condition of the baseball field. The left side, whenever it rains, retains so much water, it takes days for it to go away. I'm hoping we can get some infield dirt to raise the left side of the infield. And the other one was the Service Club's fishing derby on the 4th of July. With all the vegetation that's been growing around the Lake Sharon, it's really hard for the little kids to get their line, get anywhere where they can get their lines in the water. So I'm hoping that now that the vegetation is pretty bare, it'd be easy to get in and try to trim that back some. And that was it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Rich. Mr. Hoff, no?
I just wanted to ask the board's permission to allow the Sleepy Hollow beautification committee to do a cleanup again on Earth Day, which is April 22nd, Saturday, from 9 to 1. That was it.
That's it. Okay, thank you, no. Amy. Amy. Tom Collenberg? No, okay. Brett Wilson.
It's me. Hi, thank you, planning and zoning, for your stuff. Hope the board follows suit. I had discussed with the village president of Carpentersville, and their dispensary brings in $35,000 more revenue to that city. You were talking about this place, maybe bringing in up to $8,000 a year. We could pave our streets gold. We could fix every lake in this village that's already in crumble. We could get a pension for the police officers that the village voted down how many years ago? Full-time police. Just a suggestion.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that's it for comments this evening. Continue with the agenda as published. Planning and zoning mission report. Before we begin that, I'd like Mr. Schuster to provide a couple of opening comments, and then we will go to Mrs. Detmer.
Thank you, Mr. President. So item 7 on your agenda is going to be a report of actions taken at the planning and zoning meeting following a public hearing that was held earlier. And last week they had a deliberation session on those matters, and Mrs. Detmer is here via Zoom to give you a summary of those actions and the discussion, some of the discussion points and findings of fact that resulted from that. I just want to point out that item 8 on your agenda then is draft ordinances drafted in the positive, just to direct discussion. But nonetheless, there they are. And after you hear the summary and any report on item 7, then item 8 will call on you to make a decision about the actually 3 items that were considered by the Plan Commission regarding that property at 1601 West Main Street. So 6, 7, 8 are really tied together tonight. We'll go first things first, and Mrs. Detmer is ready to give you her report of what occurred at the Plan Commission.
Good evening, and thank you for letting me join you via Zoom. I apologize I couldn't be there this evening in person. The public hearing was held on January 23rd, and we had a very good turnout by the citizens of the village of Sleepy Hollow. The proponent made the presentation via his attorney, and Mr. Ryback is on this meeting via Zoom without picture, from what I can tell. So he is available should you have questions later for him. The findings of fact for the special use itself, and again, this is for a self-storage facility, which is permitted as a special use in the B2 district. And there were 7 findings of fact that were required to be determined by the Planning and Zoning Commission. And the first is the establishment, maintenance, and operation of the special use will not be detrimental to or endanger the public health, safety, morals, comfort, or general welfare. And you all should have a copy of these, so I'm not going to take time to read through each and every one of them. But during testimony from the public, there were concerns about public safety, additional workload for the police department, and Chief Parma was able to provide information that indicated it would not be, based on neighboring communities, an increase in workload to any great extent. And the second is the special use will not be injurious to the use or enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity for the purposes already permitted, and will not substantially diminish or impair property values within the neighborhood. There was testimony with indicators that it could perhaps impact values, but there was nothing specific. There was no set standard or study that was done to impair or to rebuke that. The proponent is offering to instill or install or maintain, I should say, a minimum of a 75-foot, and was even considering a 100-foot buffer of the existing natural area, albeit it would need to be maintained properly, because we don't want dead trees or whatever might be along there as a buffer in addition to the required buffer of the village ordinance. The residents of especially Laurel Court were greatly concerned about that and did express their concerns about having a facility like this. The traffic shouldn't be an issue because it'll be coming in off of Route 72, so it won't be impacting the residential streets. The third one is the establishment of the special use will not impede the normal or orderly development and improvement of the surrounding property for uses permitted in the district. Again, the only other lot available in the B2 district currently is the one between 1001 West Main Street and the AutoZone Dunkin' Donuts structure within the B2. The adequate utilities, access, roads, drainage, and or necessary facilities have been or are being provided. Again, they will have to meet the requirements of the Kane County Stormwater Ordinance, as well as all of the village ordinances for that. And then again, the egress would be off of Route 72 and is controlled by IDOT, not the village. And then The last one is the special use shall in all other respects conform to the applicable regulations of the district. Thank you. Sorry, I'm not sure where that came from. I apologize. The applicable regulations for the district in which it's located, except as such regulations may in any instance be modified by the Board of Trustees pursuant to the recommendations of the Planning and Zoning Commission. So those were the findings of fact. The major concern, and which was the determining decision on the vote, I believe, as presented by the commissioners, was the in quotes moral issue of no sheds being permitted in the residential district, whereas it is allowed in the B2 district, which this property is zoned. And based on that, they voted to, on the vote to allow the special use, they voted against it. And that is their recommendation, therefore, to you folks as the Village Board of Trustees, is to deny the special use. The other two items that were taken under consideration also in that public hearing was the variance to increase the floor area ratio from what is allowed in the commercial, which is what this would be, of 0.23, to what is allowed for offices in the B2, which is 0.43. And again, you have the findings of fact before you and what has to be considered in that floor area ratio. And again, on a motion made and seconded to recommend approval of the petition of the variance for the maximum floor area ratio, it was in a vote of 8 to 4 nays, the motion failed, and therefore they recommend that you deny that particular variance request. Likewise, for the maximum building height, they again did likewise voted against it and therefore recommend that it be denied. And again, you have the recommendations before you in your packet. That summarizes it as quickly as I could. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Detmer. We have Mrs. Detmer, you will be staying with us, right, Barb?
Yes, sir, I will be.
Okay, thank you. I understand we've got Mr. Ryback on the line also, if necessary.
Showing on the
Could you acknowledge your presence? Mr. Ryback, you're muted.
Hi, this is Conrad Ryback, the petitioner. I'm present.
All right, Connie, we just wanted to be sure that you could hear us and we could hear you as we proceed. If we need to call upon you, I will do so. Thank you, sir. Okay, that was Mrs. Detmer's P&Z report. Brings us current. Now we move to the attorney's report. Mr. Schuster.
Gentlemen, this evening, you'll find on your desk a revised version and an updated version of the proposed ordinance for your consideration. This ordinance regarding the application for a special use at 1601 West Main Street will remind you that the proceedings at the Plan Commission resulted in a recommendation against approving that. But I wanted to direct your attention especially to section 2. There were a number of conditions that had been proposed by staff to apply to this petition. And many of these had some discussion at the Plan Commission level, but since they voted, of course, to recommend denial, they did not vote on or take a position on any of these particular conditions. Nonetheless, in your discretion, should you determine that perhaps the special use should be allowed here, these are the types of conditions that you could consider applying to the property for its operations, design, and so on. So that's probably the first order of business. Obviously, the two variations that were requested are also part of this consideration. The owner had asked for the ability to cover a bit more of the ground with building structures. That's the floor area ratio determination. He's asking to use the ratio that would apply to a commercial building rather than to an industrial type building on that site. And secondly, he's asking that one of the buildings be allowed to be at least 2 stories in height. That has to do with the slope of the property. And as I understood the testimony and the concept plan that was presented from the Illinois Route 72 perspective, it would have a 1-story appearance. But from the southerly or southeasterly view of the property, it would have a 2-story appearance. I likened it at the meeting to a walkout basement kind of structure in a residence. Because of the slope, the back side, if you will, the south side would have a 2-story appearance. So those are the items before you, and each requires your action this evening.
Okay. First item, and is the ordinance granting a special use to allow for the storage facility for indoor storage of personal property at 1601 West Main in the B2 Village Business District in the village. Do we have a motion to so approve?
Question? Are we voting on the one that was in the past or the one that's on the desk?
I'm asking for a motion on the one that's on your desk in front of you.
If we're making a motion, we have to clarify the differences in it, so we know what we're
Well,
discussing.
that could be in discussion or it could be upfront, as you choose.
May I have a motion?
There's more, I can just say in general, there's more detailed potential conditions in the one that's before you on your desk. If the motion, it depends on how you make a motion to approve it as is. There's a blank or 2 in it. To approve it with some or all of those, or none of them.
Yeah, and that's what it would be nice to know what we're making the motion on discussing before we make the motion. So if it's,
Well,
if it's this or the other, and what the differences are between the ones that I spent all weekend reading as opposed to one that I've not read yet. But
There's more detail about the possible conditions in section 2 in the one in your hand.
May I, sir?
That's the only difference.
May I?
Mrs. Detmer?
Yes. Trustee Nemec, the items that are in the draft that is on your desk were basically covered under your the findings of fact and recommendation that you received in your packet previously. So it wasn't reading for naught. It's just that they got transferred into in a special use. You want to be able to control the development and make it as compatible as possible. And that's what these different restrictions had been, that I moved from what had been discussed at various planning and zoning commission meetings. But again, they hadn't voted on that. So we moved it into the ordinance to try and keep everything a continuity between what had been discussed previously, like on the fence, that it looks like residential versus a commercial type of building and that type of thing. Thank you.
Can we discuss it first before the motion?
What's that? I prefer to have a motion on the floor before we have discussion.
All right, so I'll start the ball. I make a motion that we, and because you always make motions in the positive, I will make a motion that we would approve the ordinance that's before us in the draft form that Attorney Schuster provided for us. Is there a second?
This one or this
Okay.
one?
This
the
one where
table.
the motion's on this.
You
On the
mentioned
draft.
one on the table. Moved by Moreno, seconded by Thorne to approve the special use of the storage facility for indoor self-storage of personal property at 1601 West Main. in the B2 district of the village. Okay, any further comments, questions, or discussion? Mr. Harmon?
The time for customer access to units is proposed as 5 AM to 11 PM.
Going to the
Would that be
restrictions,
amended
that can be amended.
to 7 AM to 11 PM? The reason being, although I can see it not happening often, if this were approved, the noise factor at 5 AM in the morning in the summer with the residents that are nearby with their windows open. So it's,
Okay, so you're suggesting we change that to 7 and 11?
Are you 11 or 10? So our noise ordinance is 10 o'clock at night for daytime. So that would match up with that, the rest of the residential area and the business area.
Okay.
Do you want to make that, we want to
Same
go this to motion on each one? or just make it-
consensus? No, let's make the changes, go through.
that sounds reasonable.
7 to 10 versus 5 to 11 for the hours.
Is
Okay,
there-
anything else, Mr. Harney?
I see the setback is 75 to 100.
Correct.
Could we consider just making it 100? Or is that variation required that I'm unaware of?
I'm not aware of where the lot.
It's not a variation, it would be a condition that could be imposed. The proponent, the applicant had suggested at the public hearing and with his concept plan that on the south side, he would leave the existing vegetation for an area of 75 to 100 feet, depending on his final planning
Okay,
and how the drainage works out and things like that. So that's where it starts.
Okay.
And maybe he has some further comment about your question. If it couldn't, Mr. Ryback, could you guarantee that'll be 100 feet on the south side?
Yes, I did mention that we would work with the village to make sure the neighbors are happy, and we would go all the way up to 100 feet.
Okay,
100 feet.
100 feet,
Right.
you guys want to put 100 feet? We can always scratch the 75 too, and we'll go 100 feet.
So that's a buffer area. You know, your ordinances require a buffer area in any event, but not up to 100 feet. So that would increase that amount.
and for clarification, where is that southern fence going? On the property line?
Mr. Ryback, are you going to put a fence on the south side of the property?
I think that would be ideal, because if we have to maintain the vegetation, it would be better to enter through our property versus the neighbors on the backside.
So the fence would be close to the property line on your southerly property line, is that correct?
We could put it as wherever the village requires in the zoning stage. I'm open to putting the fence at 100 feet in or at the borderline. I'm open to it.
Okay.
Go at 100 feet, but that can be changed, right, in the future?
The setback,
No,
The
it's not
fence,
the setback, it's where the fence would be.
that's what I mean, but I mean, at the future, if there's some issue and he needs to move it, or otherwise, that,
You'd have to come in and modify the special use.
right,
Correct.
but that
I
would
mean,
be,
it's possible that that application be filed. If that's what you're asking.
what would the process be? If we said 100 feet, if we said 100 feet right now, and then for some reason it wasn't practical in a few spots, they need to move to 75, is that just a simple modification of the ordinance, or would it require?
Well, you have to file a petition to modify the special use and have a public hearing and come back to the board for a new ordinance to change that requirement. If it was imposed as a condition in this ordinance.
I'm not really comfortable having a fence right in somebody's backyard, especially with a few of those homes that's like right up against, just by the setbacks of the home, so.
would those walls on the south and west side be brick? Would there be a need for a fence there?
Mr. Ryback?
I'm sorry, which side?
Would the south and the west side wall, of your building require fencing if there's no doors or windows?
No, they don't. No, we could continue the southern building. We could go from eastern border all the way to the right side. I mean, from east to the west, it could be a one-piece long building. I do not need to have a fence. The fence is only for, some before in discussions we had about securities. That's the whole reason why we did the fence. But it does not need to be present there. No.
What do you think about that, Joe?
That's kind of Ed.
Well, I didn't understand your comment.
I didn't want a fence right on the property line. I think that's what Ed was saying
All right,
too.
that's okay.
So
So
we have
you're
no fence.
agreeing if you put it inside,
So we could.
farther inside.
It would be beneficial.
Beneficial, so we could actually say a fence no closer to 100 feet on the south and west side. If there is one.
May I?
Yes, Ms. Detmer.
The original concept plan that we're dealing with indicated the fence would be between the buildings, so no total, in quotes, perimeter fence would be required. At no time has there been discussion of putting it on the property line. There are requirements for access by the fire department that will need to be worked out as we go through the codes. And again, just a reminder, this is a concept plan, so we don't have an exact site plan for the drainage or how that will be impacted. And that's kind of why we left it as 75 to 100, so that we had that flexibility as the proponent, and then for the requirements that the village has to impose, that if greater like drainage for a detention/retention pond has to be put in there, that it might eke out to be like 75 feet in that southeast corner where the detention pond is currently indicated on the concept plan. So that's why we were trying to give a buffer, but have some give and take without having to go back through all of it. And 75, again, is very generous. Just for thought process, anybody else that comes in could literally go all the way to up to 40 feet if they came in with a project that didn't require a special use.
Okay. All right,
So Mark, what wording would you suggest just to guarantee that there's no fence within 100 feet of the south and west property line? Just that?
just that the fence must be placed within the property and not on the property line?
Well, you're saying item 2G. Your concern is that any fencing be on the south and west sides be placed at least 100 feet from the property line.
That is it.
Is that what you're?
I wouldn't want it on the property.
Yeah, so I like Mark's wording there. And
100 feet from the property line?
so not be closer than 100 feet from the property line, the south and the west boundaries. Is that what Mark, whatever Mark just said is pretty well described.
Well, I'm trying to be sure I understand what you're saying.
I think you said it, that
Okay.
no fence should be located within 100 feet of the property line on the south or west property line.
It's gonna take it right up to the end.
Yeah,
Edge of the
my thought was I didn't want it on the properry line.
This takes it all.
So you're okay if it's 10 feet or something, or.
Well, I was just asking what would be acceptable.
Should we put a number in there or?
I don't know.
Well, we don't know where the building's going.
Yeah, that's would have helped a lot if we had some kind of concept plan in the packet, because I have no idea other than seeing green what any of this looks like, so that makes it very difficult.
We had some of it earlier when he was in last year. He presented us some ideas on it.
Not less,
Okay,
not less than what? 50?
50,
not less than 50.
that's extra buffer for the residents.
South and west.
Okay, anything else on the restrictions?
Just a general question, with this being a special exception, special exemption, we can put forward the conditions that we want.
That's what we're doing.
That's right. Now, if this is or isn't approved and this doesn't happen and another B2 business comes in and says, we want to put something here, as long as they meet the building codes of Sleepy Hollow, there are no conditions we can put on them, is that correct?
That's correct. If they could come in
Right.
on B two,
Just wanted to
on the
clarify.
commercial aspect, they could bring in a convenience store. They
Right.
could apply for a liquor license and tobacco,
Mhm.
and we could have a convenience store there selling
Right,
whatever they wanted. They would probably like to have a 5 to 12.
right, yep, okay, thank you, just wanted clarification on that. Yep.
So I just like to make a comment. I know I made the motion so that we could have this discussion. You know, so at least we keep everything the way it should be. This particular document is referencing conditions that we as a village board want to impose in this build, in this concept. The issue I have is I attended both the January public meeting, public comments meeting as a resident, and I attended the March one a few weeks ago as a resident to listen. And I kept hearing, and I heard it again tonight, Trustee Nemec mentioned it, it's always been this concept plan. And I struggle with a concept plan because the concept could morph into something else, at which point that would also need to be addressed. So in staying within the confines of this motion on this draft, on this the conditions that we are applying, I don't think any condition would allow me to vote yes for this to move forward. Because I think that there are things in this draft ordinance that if we were to, as we had some conversation recently here, you know, a fence and a location and a distance, but there may be other things that this would be all for naught based on the final build of this thing. So in looking at this, I don't have any other conditions that I can think to put on this, other than the fact that it shouldn't exist at all.
Any other comments, discussion, concerns?
And I just as a question, are we gonna also have opportunity to discuss the other stuff that was in the packet?
At this moment, Anthony,
we're only
you're
talking about this.
concentrating on this.
On the conditions.
Once I get done.
So noted, sir. Thank you.
Just a question, and I know Barbara, the petitioner, it says very specifically that the only access could be 72. And I know there's a creek there and some wetlands and some other issues, but is there a reason that we're prohibiting access to the other strip mall where the stoplight or?
There-
stoplight-
There is no cross-access easement that was ever put in with the development of the strip mall. So there's no access there.
The owners of
This
the
one-
strip mall to the east have not granted permission to anybody to cross from their property into the property.
Did anybody ask them or?
Not at this point.
But they already have the access on 72 because of the former driveway into the property. And IDOT will be controlling where that goes in. Right now, I believe it's fairly close to the property line on the west side along 72.
So, did you understand it, Mr.
No,
Nemeth?
it was kind of broken up there, but yeah,
Well,
it just,
This owner has a right for access.
No, I understand
to
that. I
this
was just-
Property from Illinois 72.
Right, no,
That cannot be closed off.
No, I was not
It
sure
could
that.
be, it could be rearranged depending on his discussions with IDOT, but the village would not control that issue. IDOT would because it's their road. But there is no right of access off of the driveway into the neighboring property at this.
No, I understand, right, but here we're prohibited in here, so should it be worded that? If you wanted to do it that way, that it was an option to him, I guess is my.
Sure.
That's where I was just going
Well,
with
it
that.
could be
Okay.
stated
Yeah.
that if
Where is it,
alternate
Joe?
access was gained from the neighboring
That's what I was going with,
property.
yeah,
You're saying as a village trustee, you would not object to that.
I think that's a great idea, yes, I think that he should have that right to do that if he wants to. And you're-
So what change are we looking at on that?
That would be item J. Access to the premises, it says would be from Main Street or Illinois 72 only. And say, provided also that the owner would have a right to have access from the property to the east. If he could
right, it's-
make appropriate arrangements.
right, we shouldn't prohibit him from doing that,
But that would not be from a public road, so it's a private.
it's up to him, but yeah. But if I'm reading this correctly, he would not have been able to do that, right? When we're saying 72 only.
Well, no, we're not saying he can't go to the neighbor and ask access.
Okay,
We're just saying that, his main access at this point is off of 72. We have no control over that. The state has that. So if he wants to move it, then he's gonna have to talk to the state, not to us. Okay, but in the meantime, we'll make a notation that he should explore the possibility of access to the parking lot to the east.
I think, Mark, what wording did you have there, Mark?
I'm sorry.
What wording did you have there? I like your wording.
Provided that owner may have access from the property to the east of the subject property, if he can arrange it.
There we go, okay.
Okay. Anything else?
In letter O on page 4. It states the special use shall expire. Construction of said use is not commenced thereon within 12 months of the date of passage of this ordinance. I like to change within 9 months.
9 months?
Mr. Ryback, did you hear that comment?
I did not. I only heard the 9 months.
I'll restate it for you. One of the conditions that could be imposed here would put a sunset on this special use so that if you don't start construction within a certain time, it would expire. It's been proposed, or I'm sorry, for discussion, it's proposed that it be 12 months. Trustee Perino has suggested that be reduced to 9 months. I don't know, I don't recall from any of your discussion what your timetable is. So I'm just asking if you have any comment about that.
But I would love to do it in 3 months. There's really,
Sure.
the world now is really tough with materials and things like that. Where I can say maybe 9 months is doable. I'm not sure with our general contractor if that is feasible. So I would be okay with that as long as there's a possibility of an extension with some kind of notice, or I'm just not sure.
Obviously, you've got to go through the permitting process with ICCI yet and with IDOT, correct?
And with.
Correct.
Yeah. So, Mr. Prino, to circle back, that's why 12 months is one suggestion. And your suggestion is to cut that back, but there's some plan review, site planning, and permitting that has to be done before you can get started.
I completely understand that.
And you're
All right,
still
no, that's fine.
Yeah, but I
Staying with
appreciate
the
the
9?
follow-up question.
consensus of the rest of the board, 9 or 12 months?
I personally would leave it 12.
Yeah, I would too with all the supply issues out there, but supply issues,
Well,
whatever, it's. I would hope they would
I had
start
to-
as soon as they can,
Yeah.
if
Okay,
approved.
okay. 9 months, no, sorry, stay at 12. Anthony,
No worries.
any other comments, questions?
I've never seen a figure. How much revenue is this supposed to bring to the village and what's it based on?
The revenue to the village is based on sales tax. Of hacking supplies,
Okay,
he estimates he sells approximately $50,000 to $75,000 worth of equipment a year. So the sales tax, from that would be coming to the village. The math on, I can do the math. The other item will be the property tax. At this point, it's a piece of property that's undeveloped. The taxes are about $350 to $400 a year to the village. With it being developed, that will definitely increase. Without bringing any other impact to the village as far as police. It's very low impact.
if I heard that correctly. I see Mark doing figures there.
Yeah, I'm making notes. I'm trying to do math. I'm sorry.
$5,000.
Mrs. Dunford, did you
Yes.
not have some sort of estimate that you provided at the public hearing?
Yes, sir. It was approximately $8,500 per year specifically to the village. That does not include all of the other taxing bodies that would be receiving a large increase from this project. And that was based on an estimate provided by the assessor's office. Again, we didn't have, he took the value assessed to storage facilities and applied it to the theoretical $5 million construction cost that had been mentioned previously in staff meetings with the proponent. And so he utilized that in coming up with those amounts.
Does that help you?
Yes.
Okay.
and I guess this is water,
I think it helped. Don't you? Yeah.
as water trustee, I assume that somebody's figured out that we can get water to it and that there'll be no cost to the village for any water improvements for it.
We've got
The proponent-
access to water line. We stubbed it off on the west side of the shopping center.
Yeah, there was some question if there was enough water for it, if it required sprinklers. So that was my question. Is it gonna require sprinklers for this bar?
Yes,
And have we done the engineering to make sure we have enough water capacity up there for it?
Wasn't Home Life shooting the pressure at 100 PSI?
Yeah, the problem we're having now is volume.
No.
yeah, and it will depend on the number of structures that actually ends up going up. So at this point, we can't really calculate it. I'm sorry.
One last comment, I'd like to show appreciation to the zoning board. The findings of fact that were provided to the board were thorough. I can tell a lot of time went into this, so I appreciate it. And the vote was 2-3, 2-4, 3 against. Is that correct?
Yeah,
For this?
yes.
Okay.
Just to piggyback off what trustee Barney said, it was, very eye-opening to hear the conversation among P and Z. And I was actually on the P and Z board when we approved Maxwell Motors. So I know some of the information and due diligence you have to go through. Unfortunately, we got screwed, to coin a phrase, with Maxway, but I'm not suggesting we would get screwed with this. However, I think that the information that a planning and zoning board takes the time and research and attention to advise the board with their findings is very valuable information. And I hope that the board considers that. That's all I have.
Thank you, Anthony. Any other comments?
I have one. I think with anything like this, you have to be very careful. let's face it, whatever decision is made, it's not gonna make everyone happy. We understand that. We have to look at what we feel is the best move for the village, in this part. Okay, now, we take into account the whole village. There's not one member that sits on this board, I can tell you, that doesn't squeak every penny out of every dollar that goes through this. So you look at money and you say, well, maybe it's $5,000. To a lot of people, that's not a lot of money. To other jurisdictions, that's not a lot of money. Sleepy Hollow, that's a fair amount of money, I can tell you, by sitting on this board. But I will agree, not everything is for every place. So I will look at that. I like the discussion here. I like what it's done. I think we got a lot to look at and figure out here very quickly.
Okay, anything else? Any other comments? Otherwise, I'll call the question. Roll call, please.
Mr. Moreno,
No,
Mr. Harney,
Yes.
Mr. Dattley,
Yes.
Mr. Nimitz,
No.
Mr. Thorne?
Yes.
Okay, the motion fails.
Just a reminder that 4 positive votes of the trustees are required in this instance, so 3 to 2 is not sufficient. Sometimes the village president has a vote, but not on this question.
Okay.
There may be no reason to
There's
consider
no
the
reason to consider
variations.
the variations at this point. The motion has failed. It's gone. It's off the table. So I'm glad you're happy, sir.
I am so.
I'm glad
Is that why you moved the roll call up, so nobody could comment after?
What's that?
Yes. Is that why you moved the roll call up?
No,
For people
the
to
public
speak?
comment.
The public comment?
Comments?
Yes.
That's why you moved it up, so nobody could say anything after.
If you could say-
Well, you could say after before. Did you want to say before or after?
Before.
Most people wanted to go before the vote, so that's why I moved it before. Otherwise, you would have had to wait until after the vote.
Well, I'm glad it failed.
All right, Mr. Attorney.
That's all I get from my.
Okay.
Yeah, let's.
Move on to
Glad you guys are all.
engineer's report.
hope you show up for more meetings.
I showed up for a lot of things.
No, you don't.
Well, they're gonna be happy when that property gets dozed.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Detmer. Thank you, Mr. Ryder. Engineer's report. Mr. Steele.
In your packet, or should have been emailed to you, there was a proposal to complete finalizing out the engineering plans for Hillcrest Drive in regards to the water main replacement. We are going to be using the funds at ARPA.
excuse me a minute, Jeff.
Oh, go ahead.
Audience, could you please be quiet? I have a hearing issue on my right side and all this shut talking. I can't hear what he's saying. So if you could keep your comments to yourself until afterwards. Thank you. I'm sorry, Jeff, go ahead.
I was just saying is in your packet, should have been emailed to you by Tony, is a proposal to complete or finalize out the engineering and go out to bid, and also the construction inspection for the Hillcrest water main. We've kind of isolated, just talking to everybody, both Joe and also I know, I'm having a hard time. I want to cough hard. Sorry, I need to clear my throat. Kyle, we wanted to replace, we've kind of isolated the worst area in regards to the water main, and that has been the Hillcrest Drive. As you recall, we're currently putting together a plan for actually the replacement of water main throughout the whole village. Those areas that are in the worst condition and the oldest. So recently ARPA has supplied the village with 425,000. Yeah, around in that area of funds, and that can be used towards the water main replacement. So basically is, in order to complete that, we need to go out to bid and finalize our plans and do the construction inspection. So questions?
We have a motion to approve the preliminary and final engineering and construction guidance agreement with Hines Engineering.
Don't move, Moreno.
Second, Nemec.
Moved by Prano, seconded by Nemec, to approve the construction guidance engineering agreement. Okay, any further comments, questions, or discussion?
Jeff, in your document, it says that by the end of December, that you'd have.
Yeah,
information.
basically, it's everything to be able to ready to go out, and hopefully we'd actually be in construction area.
I'm sorry. You hope to be, bid the project early next year and under construction next summer, is that what you said?
Kind of, it all depends on scheduling wise, but I actually had plans for everybody to look at actually this year, obviously, and then kind of have everything ready to go out to bid, later this year.
Thank you.
So we think we'll be ready to go to bid by December 31st,
Yep.
2020.
Easily, yeah. Wanted to give just kind of a later date, just in case something happened, always started any funds or anything that came up, so.
Any questions concerning this contract agreement? All right, roll call, please.
Mr. Nimitz,
I.
Mr. Moreno,
Aye.
Mr. Thorne,
Aye.
Mr. Dattley,
Aye.
Mr. Harney.
Aye.
5 affirmative votes and no negative votes, the motion so passes. Thank you all. Anything else, Mr. Steele?
That is it, otherwise, later on under old businesses or public requests, regards to fire events. But
Okay.
that's it.
Thank you, Jeff. Okay, Director of Finance, Mr. Van.
Request for motion for the approval of the warrants in the amount of $88,083.35.
So move.
Second, Harney.
Moved by Thorne, seconded by Arnie to approve the warrants of April 3rd, 2023 in the amount of $88,083.35. In additions, deletions, comments, or questions? One question I do have, Kyle, 506 Stevens Court. Was that possibly a problem with the construction? of
No, it's,
505?
it was a month before.
It was a
They,
month
they
before.
tapped last Friday. And the main break was about a month before they tapped.
They didn't have anything.
Now, the water main is on the opposite side of the street as the property.
Okay, just curious.
I thought it too when I saw it, but
Okay, I saw the address, I questioned and found out it was, all right. Okay, that one answers my question. Anybody else have any questions? If not. Roll call, please.
Mr. Harney.
Aye.
Mr. Dattley.
Aye.
Mr. Thorne.
Aye.
Mr. Nimitz.
Aye.
Mr. Moreno.
Aye.
5 affirmative votes, no negative votes, and motion so passes. Thank you all. Okay, anything else?
By this point, we would have approved the budget. However, we're still waiting on figures for salaries because of the police contract. So if we don't have anything in the very near term, I would like to have a budget without the salaries approved on the next board meeting. This is a point of information.
All right.
I can tell you that there's been discussion between the parties, a couple of exchanges, and the next meeting of this board is the target for bringing the proposed renewed collective bargaining agreements for both the full-time and the part-time officers to the board for approval.
Okay,
I hope we make it.
you got 14 days.
We have another bargaining session that we're gonna do Thursday, if Mr. Nemec could be at least.
I sent out my schedule to you, so.
Okay.
I'll talk to you.
Okay. All right, anything else?
That's it.
All right, thank you, Eugene. Next item, trustees reports, roads and parks, Mr. Harney.
Number of items to report on. If you've driven on Sleepy Hollow Road, I'm sure you've noticed anytime we have a rain event, that it floods across Sleepy Hollow Road, and I'm talking about the area just to the east of Crane Court. Public Works has informed me that they've contracted out to build a swale from that area of Sleepy Hollow Road, a swale to Crane Court. and that'll hook up to the culvert there on Crane Court. So that should take care of that issue, which has been there a while and has been threatening Sleepy Hollow Road itself. Sabatino Park update. As you're aware, with all the rain that we have, it's a swamp over there. And until that dries out, we're not going to be able to get it ready for the installation of the new playground equipment, which is due to arrive later, late April. Provisions have been made. If the Sabatino Park area is not ready for the installation of the new equipment at that time, we'll just store the equipment at Public Works and install it when given the chance to do so. That has been contracted out to smooth that area out and remove the cement there that remains there. Laurel Court, we've all members of the board have been given photos of the damage that was done on Laurel Court to the Public Works recently graded it and seeded it, and either intentionally or unintentionally, someone drove through that area. The police are notified and it's under investigation. If anybody has any information, you might forward it to the chief. Let's see. Road salt. Public Works has purchased 100 tons of road salt.
No, we have 100 tons left to purchase.
100. My next
Not
number is
delivered
to turn it over to Kyle. For clarification. I couldn't even introduce it correctly, so go ahead.
We have 100 tons left to order for our contract of 560 tons a year. And then that'll put us in excess of about 300 tons left over for the rest of the year until next fiscal year when we go to purchase more.
And the reason we're doing that is how do we save the village money?
Oh, if we don't, so our contract is 80% of 700 tons. That allows us to, or we have to order up to 560 tons, and it'll allow us to go over 700 tons. If we have to. If we do not order 560 tons and pick it up or have it delivered, they charge a storage fee per day per ton. So it's a lot of money.
Okay. That is all I have to report this morning.
All right, thank you, Ed. Finance, I think Eugene covered that earlier. We'll have to take a look at the budget on the 17th. Water and sewer, Mr. Nimitz.
No report.
Thank you, Joe. Police and public safety, Mr. Deanne.
Yes, just one thing, would like to make a motion to authorize Chief Parma to offer a conditional offer to Irvin Peterson for a part-time patrol officer. This is a conditional offer to get all the information and everything. The full offer will be made at the next meeting once everything is met. But this is to authorize the chief to give a conditional offer.
Motion and the salary.
No salary yet.
No
We
salary.
just need a conditional offer employment, send him for his physical and do the things I need to before we make the final hiring decision.
Okay, so worst case scenario, we're out the physical
Correct.
expense.
Correct.
$450 or so.
Correct.
Okay, all right. Your motion, Mr. Daly,
Yes.
second?
Second.
Moved by Daly, seconded by Harney to authorize the chief to extend a conditional offer of employment for a part-time patrol officer to a Mr. Irving Peterson. Any comments, questions, or discussion? Hmm? Yep. It's still $450. It's a
big expenditure.
Expenditure.
Not a big one,
Not a big one, but $450.
just checking.
Yep, that's why I called the motion. There being no further comments, questions, or discussion, roll call please.
Mr. Marino,
Aye.
Mr. Dudley,
Aye.
Mr. Harney,
Aye.
Mr. Nimitz,
Aye.
Mr. Thorne.
Aye.
5 affirmative votes and no negative votes, the motion so carries. Thank you all.
I have nothing further.
All right, thank you, Mr. Diatley. Steve. Building and environment, Mr. Thorne.
Yeah, some time ago, I received some information about something called the Mayor's Caucus Green Region Compact. And what that turns out to be is a loose organization of different governments that is there to promote environmental issues as they can. And I'm proposing that we join this. There's no cost to us at all. There's no reporting requirement at all. What it does do for us is it does give us it does show that we're prioritizing environmental issues, but they also offer a great many resources. If we decided we wanted to go into some sort of a program and start doing different kinds of environmental things, they have tons of resources to help us with. So, so my motion is that I propose that that Sleepy Hollow join this compact.
Second.
Moved by Thorne, seconded by Nemec to join the Metropolitan Caucus Greenest Region Compact. Information's in your packet. There's a website for it. This has been endorsed by the Metro West and the other 6 government of councils throughout the region, along with the city of Chicago and 144 of the municipalities within Chicago. Worthwhile event.
Yeah.
Okay, no other comments, questions, or discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion so carries. Thank you all.
For informational purposes, this resolution has been noted as 550.
Thank you.
So it for further discussion, if there's any citation necessary for the resolution number 550.
And could the clerk please inform the mayor's caucus and the Metro West of our resolution passage this evening?
Will do.
Okay.
Thank you. Sir.
That's the only other step. Yep.
Anything else, Mr. Thorne?
Nope, that's it for me.
All right, thank you, Mark. Building and zoning, Mr. Moreno.
Like to just address a question to Ms. Detmer. Barb, can you hear me?
Barb?
Yes, sorry.
Any additional information on the shed that's at Sleepy Hollow Elementary School?
I haven't been able to make, or I haven't had an opportunity to make contact with the school yet. That's all I know.
Okay. All right, thank you. The other comment is, I know that, and you know, I'm gonna pass on saying that. So that's all I have, Mr. President.
Thank you, Anthony. Okay, moving on to old business, ordinance number 23-3, an ordinance amending the charges to be assessed for water and sewer to the village. We have a motion to so approve.
So moved. Second, Diatley.
Moved by Nemec, seconded by Diatley to approve ordinance 2023-3, an ordinance amending the charges for water and sewer within the village. Any comments, questions, or discussion? Being none.
I'll come if I may, Frank, just briefly, you know, it was an attempt, Mr. Nemec and I worked and just, and you know, he's, there will soon be a new chair of sewer and water. He's anxious to put this in proper order before he's done, and we really worked hard to get a final comprehensive adjustment to the sewer and water regulations at this time. So I hope it meets with your approval.
I also say for that too, Mark, thank you for, we have a lot on your plate of getting it done, and also you continue to put a ton of comments and looked at it, made several suggestions that would be in the best financial interest of the water and sewer department. So thank you, Eugene, for looking at all that, and taking your time for that.
Okay, no other comments or questions? Roll call, please.
Mr. Thorne.
Aye.
Mr. Harding.
Aye.
Mr. Dattley.
Aye.
Mr. Moreno.
Aye.
Who's in there?
Aye.
Mr. Nimitz.
Aye.
5 affirmative votes, no negative votes, the motion so carries. Thank you all. Okay, moving on to other old business. You all remember some months ago, the Service Club inquired about the placement of planter boxes within the old village community garden back here behind Public Works. That ended up bringing up a few questions considering the location in the floodplain, floodway area, And it was bounced over to Mr. Steele to take a look at, and we've got it back on the agenda this evening.
Yeah,
Just
so basically
please.
it's, since it's in floodplain location, it requires approval from Kane County, Stormwater Management. And I've been in contact with them, and as long as planter beds are placed above the floodplain elevation they can be constructed. It just requires a permit application through the county. However, in regards to that I'm speaking with Ms. Detmer, I guess there's concern about it being an attached structure on there. Barb would be able to talk a little bit more about regards to that.
Well, technically per your zoning code, accessory structures are not permitted. If it is on village property and done by the village itself, it can have accessory structures, but it would have to be constructed by the village itself. And that would be under paragraph E, permitted on village property with conditions, and detached structures for public use erected by the village on village property is the only allowance. So you have to look at the technicality of the service club being actually the village or the service club. I'm sorry, but that's what your code says.
Okay. Does that clarify it for us?
Probably like mud.
Close to, it's in the floodway.
If it's a structure for public use, it'd be acceptable, Ms. Detmer, is that what you said?
What the code actually says is detached structures for public use erected by the village on village property
Sure.
is allowed.
So the village could
could
assign that direction duty to its agents.
Pay them $1 to
But
construct
I
it.
think the key is for public use, so how is it intended, or how is that wrapped into this proposal?
Public use was those planters were to be placed in the community garden, available for rent? No, available
Use.
for use.
Yeah.
By assigning to a particular person or group of persons?
If there's a planter available and someone wants to use it. have
Make
at
an
it.
application.
First come, first served?
For the season, yeah.
Public use.
So that might work. And the actual construction might be done by other than village employees.
Well, if they build it, I can just move it out. Move it to the spot.
Right.
I'm sure Kyle will participate.
Sure.
Okay. So the overall consensus of the board is.
Yeah.
Move on with it?
Go for it.
Okay, got a motion?
I move that the board approve the Sleep Valley Service Club. That we contract Sleep Valley Service Club to build planter boxes that can be placed on village property for public use.
Please, under the supervision of the Department of Public Works.
Under the supervision of Kyle.
That'd be okay.
Moved by Morano, seconded by Deanne to have planter boxes installed within the village community garden under the supervision of Public Works. Any further comments, questions, or discussion? There being none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion so carries. Thank you all. Any other old business to come before the board?
No other old business.
No other new business?
Oh, new business? Motion to adjourn. Second, yeah.
Moved by Harney, seconded by Deanne. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion so carries. I'll see you on the 17th.
Yes. Tony, what does the, what does election rolling term by?
Why didn't
Then you got 180 of us. Yeah, do it anytime. I was saying, I was actually.